Jonathan, thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me, James.
Yeah, so tell me, Jonathan, like how do you go from attorney to CEO of a fast growing SaaS company? Tell me a little bit about your story and journey.
Yeah, it's been a fun one. What most people don't know about me is I started on computer science at NC State, which is a local engineering school where I'm out of in Raleigh, North Carolina. I was a huge gamer growing up. I've had computers basically on the internet since I was like seven. Things like this. Back when the internet was like the wild, wild west, not like with parental controls everywhere like they have it now, right? Um, And so I dropped out of the computer science program like a year and a half, 2 years into it. I didn't want to be a person sitting behind a computer. That's a big joke because now it's basically what I do. But yeah, I went to law school. I worked in politics here in the US. I worked on Capitol Hill. I worked in local politics here and campaigning. Uh, after 2 summers in DC, didn't want to start out in the real world, decided to go to law school. Went into law school and came out, I like to say, in 2009, which was like the worst time to come out of a job with the financial crisis. So my 2L clerkship that I had didn't offer me a job, and it was the first time in their like 35 year history that they didn't offer a job. So I like to say I went back to my mother's house, and I had a degree to practice law, and an undergraduate degree, and a license to practice law, and I went back and sold appliances doing what I did in high school at Sears. Um, so my brother was a kind of government contractor, and he's a software developer, designer, and the iPhone like SDK had just come out basically in like 2008. Um, and so he was a Mac developer, I like to say, before it was cool. And he was going around to all these conferences, and I just like, hey, are there attorneys there? Do they actually know what you all are doing? And it was kind of like, no, there's only these patent attorneys that show up every now and then. So I decided to kind of start my first business, which was start a legal career, go meet software developers, indie software developers, and try to give them, legal advice, everything from like incorporation, trademark, copyright, contract negotiation, a lot of business advice as well that was tied up in it. And it was nice. I kind of became the iPhone attorney guy. And I met the founder of what was PS Kit, the name of the company before we rebranded to Nutrient, as I gave a talk in Leicester, England, about business negotiation. And PS Kit became my client. And then lo and behold, like 3 months later, we're meeting in Mel's Diner in San Francisco. He's looking, one person. He's got about like 150, 200K in revenue. Business is like, okay, let's actually start doing this. Do you know anybody that actually wants to take on the business side of it? Because I don't want to do it. And I kind of was like, hey, me, right? I'll do that. So I like to say this, my wife was pregnant with our first child. We were waiting to move into our first house. We were living with our in-laws, and I decided to moonlight at night, you know, with this Austrian that was 4,500 miles away from me. Eventually, within our first couple of weeks, I think it was like I wanted to do it for 3 months. I think I ended up doing it for 5 weeks. And it was clear, hey, we have something going here. We can do this together. We got along very well. It was a really good mix of strengths. And so, yeah, I left the law firm I was at, practicing, doing emotions practice, doing a bunch of stuff, litigation. And I think it was the first time I brought it to my wife. She thought I was crazy. And then, like, 2 days later, she was like, hey, if this is what you think we should do, I'll back you. And so I was like, yeah, like, I want to do it.
Nice.
And so that's kind of the start. Obviously, that was 2013, 2014. And we were just an iOS viewer framework to help people. The original use case was put a magazine on an iPhone. And then it became, I don't know, annotate an iPhone. The iPad came out. We went to Android, we went to web, and all of a sudden we were doing signing, and DocuSign was a customer, Dropbox was a customer. We had some really early hits because we were kind of early to that mobile space and
Mm.
the PDF world. as an older, sort of like, still graph paper and pocket protectors type world. So we looked really fresh and new. And yeah, we built out a business kind of from there and, stone by stone built it up
Mm.
from there.
Yeah. Yeah, super cool, interesting story. Like, and you, yeah. So I mean, to pick up those kind of clients, like almost off the bat, I'm sure it wasn't, almost off the bat and all swimming and stuff, but you were obviously solving like a niche problem. Um, so it was, yeah. So it was like clear value proposition. And is that kind of the reason why you just jumped straight in? What sort of prompted you to just jump straight in and like see a vision for this growth?
Well, so in my time as an attorney, kind of consulting with software engineers, the thing I most commonly saw was great products.
Mm,
The thing I didn't see was great marketing, any idea of how to price it, any idea of a business model, what they should be investing their time on. They'd almost always be 95% development, 5% everything
mm,
else. So when I met Peter, the thing that Peter had that was really good is he had already been building a reputation in the iOS space doing open source. So iOS developers kind of knew who he was. And I had a reputation in the iOS space in the US. And so we had a lot of, it was a very close-knit community in the iOS space. And so, yeah, and there were other competitors there, but not nearly as robust as what we were doing. So they were, kind of paying it lip service, checking the box, and we were kind of really focused on that developer and really focused specifically on what that developer cared about. And so, yeah, we had a lot of word of mouth marketing, a lot of people just from conferences that we were still going to that were still a ton of them. People would ask us what we do, we'd tell them about it. And if they hadn't run into PDFs, and a friend that ran into it, or they would recommend us, hey, I watched this guy give a talk or something like that, or I know this open source project this other guy did. And yeah, we were really lucky. I do think we were lucky because most of the vendors in the PDF space didn't weed their garden. They didn't go to mobile soon enough. And that was partly because, iOS and Objective-C, most of these developers came from Microsoft land. And so they're used to C Sharp and .NET. And, Apple had always had these, crazy developers that nobody cared about the platform because no one was really there. And that really changed with the iPhone. So once we kind of got, momentum there, it was easy, kind of like what people do when they build platforms now and what we're still doing today. Okay, what else could we build? Well, do you have an Android client? Hey, we'll build an Android framework, right? Hey, do you have a desktop app? Oh yeah, actually our desktop app's the main app. Well, hey, web development's catching on. The thing that made me jump though was just seeing like a clear product that uh, was loved in the market, was needed in the market. Like, I mean, and when I say needed, like I don't know. You could go somewhere else, but there was nothing in the market that looked like us in 2014.
mm,
Like not as that couldn't do all the things we did, provide the UI we did, and do it in such a quality manner. And so, we had a web store up at the time. We had, we weren't selling on a subscription basis. When I first started, it was this kind of weird. Hey, well, if you renew before the end of the year and you want the latest maintenance, we'll give you a 60%, discount. And if you wait and come back later, we'll give you a 40% discount. And the first thing I did was tear down that web store, tear down the idea of this. We went straight to SaaS and straight to subscriptions. And to be frank, not because I knew anything about a SaaS space or, how SaaS metrics and any of this stuff. I didn't know anything about that stuff. It was more like, okay, how do we build a sustainable business if we want to hire more people on? And as a bootstrapped, owner, I think hopefully most people just are, hey, I want to be able to hire smart people and be able to pay them and never have to let go of a really smart person because I can't pay them. And so to me, the business model just made more sense to be a subscription. Adobe had just moved to a subscription with Adobe Acrobat. They were kind of like first mover. And yeah, we had a lot of customers that, I don't know, were angry about it because all of a sudden it was more expensive than it was. But to be frank, a lot of our customers, especially the larger, Silicon Valley startups, we're like, A, we were charging so little compared to what they would have paid
Mm,
for us, and B, they just wanted us to stick around. They wanted, like, they almost wanted to see us survive so we could continue to provide the value that we were providing for them. So yeah, the product definitely had a clear value prop. It was niche in the sense that it was the iOS space. Um, the use, because the other thing we had is, I mean, SDK use cases, you just need a really complicated problem that can't just easily be solved by open source, and that is a pain in the ass enough that a developer doesn't want to work on it. And then you need to be able to kind of like get a head start and go there and stay ahead, right? So the problem was perfect for this sort of like embedded software development kit. And engineers, developers are hard market to or hard audience to market to or hard persona to market to, but they're super loyal. And if you do them well, they'll tell everybody about you. So,
mm,
like, if you do bad, they'll tell everyone about you then as well. So,
mm,
uh, they generally talk online, a lot of word of mouth, things like this. So you can get a reputation there and it helps.
mm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I see the same with in the SaaS world. Developers building products. They're coders, they're programmers, but not necessarily business minded, sales minded, marketing. So that's always a skill set that's like hugely valuable to bring to product driven companies. And you're from an attorney background, and like this is funny because I'm like marketing sales. And one like really respectable copywriter once said, when you build a case through like a marketing campaign, think like a litigator and like build a case, and look at, and you probably think this is rubbish, but look at like look at like law drama series and how they like close out and build the cases. So I kind of got into that idea, that just kind of popped up when you were talking about that. But I mean, you can like communicate really clearly, tell a great story, and paint a picture. So I don't know whether there's synergies there, or you might just think
I,
that's
no, no, I think there are definitely like, I mean, when you're in court or like an opening and closing argument, the classic like things you see. Um, I think one of the things I was really lucky is that, basically since I was 14, I've been working. And I've worked a ton of different jobs. Like I bagged groceries, I worked retail, I worked at a restaurant, I sold cars. I like to tell people I've done every job that everyone hates. And that's
mm,
like, I've been an attorney, people hate attorneys, right? I worked in politics, people hate politics, right? I also was a used car salesman and people hate used car salesmen. So, the funny thing was how all that sort of range of experience when I was younger, even the gaming side of it, because like I think the other thing is you got to be able to actually understand your product very well to be able to tell a
mm,
story to the audience that resonates. So you have to know that audience very well.
mm,
Um, all those things kind of came together, and I think I used to say if I had any like superpower or whatever, it was that I was technical enough that I got respect from technical people, and non-technical enough that I had soft skills and I understood that humans are emotional beings and things like
mm,
this, right? And so, yeah, that's benefited me well. And still, I think to this day, benefits me well. But to your point about, I think one of the things that's interesting that I didn't know until Insight and I kind of got into this private equity world. The first thing everybody thinks when they think private equity is like, or even venture capitalists, is this whole like, well, did they tell you what to do? And it's like they don't realize that, nah, I mean, now there's operating boards and things like that, and they have operating groups and these partners. But they kind of rely on the founder or the business owner with the product. They're going to buy companies or invest in companies where they think the product's already going to be taken care of and grow to market. And then what they're really good at is throwing a lot of gasoline on a fire with sales and marketing leaders or sales and marketing shops. That's what they know. They know how to take something that's already at product market fit and like how do we scale this thing. And so
mm,
I think you have the level, like maybe a private equity firm does it at 10 million because that's when they decide you have product market fit. I think it's the same thing though when you're at this 0 to 1 stage as well. You have to have somebody that understands, okay, I got this great thing. Now how do I get my first customer? Now how do I get my second customer, my third customer? Now how do I tell the story or ultimately see pattern recognition amongst these people that I can find more people that have a similar product problem.
Mm, yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and it definitely sounds like you've got a unique skill set and blend of skills from like your diverse background. So yeah.
I fake it really well, man.
Yeah, so tell me, so you mentioned like recent rebrand, repositioning. Tell me more about that, about Nutrient and you know the reasons for that and what the kind of vision is moving forward.
Yeah, it's great. Which it's funny because normally people ask that question, why did I name the company Nutrient, right? But really, what we got private equity funded in 2021, like right at the height of SaaS,
Mm,
multiples. My two technical founders exited the business. One of them's basically back now. And so we did what every private equity firm like kind of encourages, like a mix of organic growth and a mix of inorganic growth. And so we did a couple acquisitions really early. And then we did a couple more, as the years kind of went on. We did our last one at the beginning of 2024. And so, what you have there is you buy these companies and you have to integrate them, both integrate them, the people, integrate the technology, and then also you have to think about like what's the story you're telling to the market? Why did you buy it? Why do these things fit together? Um, and then we also had this beautiful name, PS PDF Kit, that had a really good iOS connotation, actually. iOS developers understood it, and no one else did. And so I have a buddy great guy. And at one point, is like, never wants to offend anybody. He was like, hey, not trying to offend you, but I don't think you're going to take PS PDF Kit public with that name. It's like not really memorable, kind of a mouthful. People mistaked it all the time. People called it PS DPF Kit, like, all kinds
mm,
of stuff, right? And so one of the things we thought about was, okay, we had this developer tools kind of in the what I call the document processing and document viewer space. This is everything from like I need to do batch document generation for invoices. I need to do, I don't know, conversion from Office documents to PDFs, to viewing a PDF, to annotating, signing, all the things you probably think about Adobe Acrobat and what people do it. And so we had this kind of SDK space that was really known, and that was, most of our acquisitions, two of our acquisitions were right there. Um, then we kind of went into the Microsoft 365 space and like SharePoint and Power Automate. And these were more like integrations. Again, same thing, document processing, document viewing, but we were selling to kind of like IT administrators, not really like, high-end developer, high-tech developers, right? And they were more like, taking a dashboard and configuring it versus like integrating it in the package manager in their project, right? And then the company we bought at the beginning of this year was a workflow automation platform. So B2B, big into government, finance, and it essentially was a form process, an RPA, so like a robotic process automation company. And so you look at all these and it's like, okay, what are you building? Why are you building this? What are you doing? And I kind of always thought that the strategy was like, you know, SDK space is great. Really great retention numbers because you embed it, it works, you renew it, you forget about it, right? Really hard. I like to call it like it's like an HVAC in a building. You don't take the HVAC in the building out unless it's really broken or until you're bulldozing the building and recreating another one, right? Uh, but so it was like, okay, this is a great business, but our main competitor had been in it 2 years before. They got funding by Silversmith and then ultimately they're owned now by Thoma Bravo. And so they had been doing this roll up and they literally bought everything that had a pulse. And so it was like, okay, well, how much more inorganic growth is in this? I think we should build a company that is a broader digital document platform that can play to enterprises that have software development teams, are on places like SharePoint, Salesforce, as well as have internal teams that could use a workflow automation platform to, help with signing or approvals or whatever, right? And I kind of thought of it like, Xerox had the document company, or when I grew up, if you said documents, it was like, yeah, Xerox, right? The document company. And there wasn't the digital document company. Like DocuSign focuses on like signing and contract management. Adobe kind of, is focused on creatives, and this is kind of their legacy is this document stuff. Microsoft is all business software, like, way too broad. And so I thought it was like, okay, if I'm building a product in the B2B space for enterprises, what sort of platform could I build? And, I did it kind of around these, around documents. It's super horizontal, which is great. Like it's replacing paper, it's digital transformation, things like that. And so then when I thought about like, okay, we looked at names. We worked with a great naming agency, Lexicon out of San Francisco, and we could do a not like a non-known word, like I don't know, Verizon or Google or Nike. These words, or Disney, even like these words that you didn't know, but now you know them, right? And I kind of was like, like I don't really like that. I don't want to spend so much time trying to correct everyone how you pronounce the name. And I wanted something memorable. And part of that was because my previous name company, I literally would spell it out every time I would say it. And so I thought about like, what are we doing kind of in workflows, in documents? What are we doing for businesses? And we thought about this term, like think of a document ecosystem. And the reason I think about this is there's a document lifecycle where, a document's created, some people do stuff on it, you pass it around. Okay, then I get like archived, put in a file folder or storage place, and it sits there. But then you think about it, it's like, what are the problems most businesses are having is there's so many things that are going into this document ecosystem. There's so much data there, unstructured data, structured data, right? Some of it is, just needs to be here for compliance reasons. Some of it I need to present in applications for users. Some of it, it's just I'm sending out statements and I need something to automate it or something like this. And it's a headless server, right? And so this whole idea of like, okay, well, what we're essentially doing is help people create healthier document ecosystems.
Mm,
Because if you think about it, most of the times the issues people have is like, oh, I don't know what's in my documents because I can't get my data. Well, we
mm,
help do OCR, intelligent data extraction, and ultimately let you know, hey, that that image-based PDF that you had no clue what was there, you now know what the content of it is, right? We help productivity in org. So it's like, uh, whether it's like, hey, why don't you automate signing or why don't you automate a form approval so you're not passing a paper form around? Um, you get notifications, your team's more productive when they're staying in your app. Your users are more productive if they're not kicking out to Microsoft Word or kicking out to Adobe Acrobat. And then it's kind of like we have this security aspect because with PDF and a lot of software and a lot of things with documents, there's a lot of sensitive information, privacy, things like that. And I had this wild brain idea that this is kind of like macronutrients, like, right? If fat protects you, your protein builds things for you, your carbohydrates give you energy and give you speed and productivity. And so I thought, yeah, like we're essentially building blocks. That is what customers take our products and build on top of them. They take our products and integrate them into a workflow. They take our products and I don't know. There's no place where we stand almost on our own. We're integrating, talking with, or ultimately part of an ecosystem or an app or a workflow with companies. So it's like we're kind of like Intel, this ingredient, company where it's like we're like Intel inside. We're the thing that you don't know that's there powering it. And so I thought, okay, yeah, like we're building blocks. We thought about like amino acids. It was like, eh. So we kind of came to nutrient, and I thought it was the other thing I wanted to do is I wanted people to do two things when they heard the name. I wanted them to go, huh? Right? That's the first thing I want them to do because then you're going to go, let me pay attention to this. Let me find out why more. Right? Let me hear this story. And then you're going to have two reactions to the story, which I hope people have the reactions. It's either like, that's stupid. Why would you do that, you healthcare company? Right? You're a supplement company, something like that. And I want those people to do that. Or I want them to go, that's a really cool story. That's a really good homage. Like, that's really cool the way they did that. I
Mm,
wanted to create lovers and haters because if it was just like, I don't know, docu PDF SDK, people would see it, know it, and forget about it and be like, yeah, that's normal. You don't pay attention to things that are expected per se.
mm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love that. I love, yeah, the whole name of the game with positioning, attaching it to metaphor, analogy, story that people can, and you're almost creating that contrarian between, or like polarity between, people getting it. Well, first of all, you've got the intrigue, that people going, what's that about? Wanting to know more, creating intrigue, and then the polarity between, yeah, people either resonating and getting it, or just thinking that's stupid. I love it. And yeah, that's funny how you mentioned the previous name of your company. When I was just just doing some quick background research, and I was thinking like, man, I need to write that down because I will get those letters jumbled up. So yeah, cool rebrand, and yeah, I love that whole story.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what are some of the? I mean, you've kind of taken me through the whole rebrand repositioning story there. But like leading up to that and the fast growth, from starting, what are some of the biggest lessons you've taken away, sort of biggest character traits maybe you've developed more and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I thought about this. I can break it up in kind of two different ways. Uh, I think there's things as a company and a culture you need to create when you're doing this. And then there's things like as a business and go to market, how you do things. And then there's, personal, right? Like personal traits, what you find in talent. I think people really, really underestimate how powerful a really great person that's really leaning into your company can be. Um, so yeah, like I mean, in our case, like we were lucky in the sense that we're kind of in a duopoly in the SDK market. So it's Coke and Pepsi a little bit there. So we're in a great market, and that helps. Like we were never unprofitable, which is nuts. I mean, even as a
Mm,
bootstrap startup, we got really lucky. You don't realize how lucky that is. And at the same time, like we went through a lot of challenges and a lot of changes in our space, and we had to make sure like we somehow problem solved to get to the right decision. Customers don't stay with you if you're not providing value and you're not continuing to provide value. So you have to learn how to like, I don't know, get a customer in, manage that customer, not let them dictate your roadmap, and at the same time, not do the things they need. But yeah, looking at these things, let me start. I think on the actual company culture side, you have to learn to motivate people to come to your company, to want to come there. Um, there's a couple ways this is done. I mean, I think the ideal way is you have, especially in like our generation, lower generations, or younger generations, they want a mission. They want to know why. Like, why am I here? If I'm just coming here to make money, I'm going to leave you as soon as I get more money, right? And that can lead to a lot of disruption because turnover can really be sapping for productivity, sapping for knowledge. You need to create an institutionalized knowledge. You need to create a myth around your company, and people need to want to be a part of that. So you have to have a why. Why do I show up there? Why would I come work for you? Generally, people want to have autonomy. And I would tell you, most people don't look back at a job and say things like, I don't know, yeah, I really love that job. I started out making X dollars, I make Y dollars now. Nobody says about a job. You say, man, when I was there, I started and I was doing this, and by the end, I've learned this and I have this responsibility. And I look like a different person now, or I grew up there, or whatever it is. Well, to do that, you have to both give people responsibility, give them the opportunity to fail, make failure okay, as well as like beat a drum. And as you get larger, I mean, we're almost 160 people. When you're 40 people or even 15 people, everybody's in the same room. Everybody's got eyeballs on everybody. You know what everybody's doing. uh, hopefully you just get really motivated people that push people, or the people get rid of the person, right? Like, but when you get larger, you need to find good managers. You need to find people that have really strong self-initiative, really low ego. I like to look at like speed of learning. Are they
Mm,
these hungry learners that they actually care? They get really, really motivated by, I learned this new thing. Um, yeah, like are they actually taking ownership? And for me, ownership is I have no clue why this happened, but I'm not going to say it happened because of this, and this. I'm gonna focus on what I could have done differently because that's the only way I could learn, right? The self-initiative one is similar. It's kind of like, I don't know, the way I heard it before is like, okay, you run into a fence. Do you stop doing work or do you try to go around the fence, go over the fence, cut through the fence? Or at the point that you can't do all that, talk to somebody else on the other side of the fence to help you get over the fence, right? You'd be surprised how many people get stuck because they hit a roadblock and they're like, "Yep, I don't know what to do. It's not my job. Let me stop. Somebody else
mm,
will do it. It'll eventually go away." Um, and so I focus on those sort of character traits in people I hire. Same with myself. I think the other thing is this, like I talk about it as like the curiosity to understand is the way I put it.
mm,
Um, you know, a lot of times in life, people look at results and they infer understanding. This person clearly knew what they were doing. Look at the results. And don't get me wrong, somebody does it over and over and over again, or they may not be able to articulate it, but they likely do. But then a lot of times things happen because of a random flip of a coin. And the question is, you, the person, knows whether you understood. I thought about this, I implemented this strategy, and this occurred. Or I thought about this, I did this, and somehow this happened, but okay, great, it happened. So some people stop there, and some people are just have an insatiable desire to want to know why.
mm,
That's a really good quality in people, especially at a startup, because you have a lot of autonomy because you have more, if you're in a growth-based startup, you have more work. I don't know how many times I've told this to people that work here. I've come in every single day, and the mountain has been larger than I left before. And so I can't think about the mountain, like the pile of work isn't going away. It's just how do every day do I create a system to chip away and ultimately focus and prioritize on the things that are most important. I think when it comes to like product and like even go to market, a lot of people want to know like certainty. It's a human like characteristic. Like, tell me the answer, right? I want to know what works. Tell me what I should do, right? And the truth is, in most places that are startups are in, you're in what like a wicked world, call it that way. It's like constantly changing,
mm,
right? And so if you're in a constantly changing world, uh, nobody can just tell you what to do because by the time they tell you what to do, it could be wrong very soon. And so you have to think about how do I approach that from a problem solving standpoint. To me, one of the great things about Peter was like you have to be okay to fail. So you have to be okay to like literally fail in public, put out a product that's embarrassing, right? And then you have to be really good at iterating. Like in your iteration speed is really what people see as innovation. There's a book I read, I forgot the name of the book, but it talked about innovating as in walking into a room with multiple doors in it, but it's a dark room. So the first thing you do is try to turn on lights to illuminate the doors. The
mm,
next thing you do is open doors. And innovation is when you're probably in the second or third room because you open a door and you go into another room that's dark with doors. And you do the same thing over again. And you open up another door and then you're in another room, right? And people look at the jump from the first room to the third or fourth room and they're like, oh man, they were so innovative. And they think that like the person knew. And the book, I think, I mean, it did it with like Charles Darwin, for instance. Like people think he went out to the Galapagos Islands and created like, the theory of evolution. And there's like, I think 15 years between him being on a reef in India, where he started noticing this, to the Galapagos Islands. Like he had been thinking about this for a long time and iterating on it and bringing in data before he even came to the conclusion. So I think it's the same if you look at most technology, most startups. So my approach to problem solving, I think the way it should do it is first, if you think you know, try to prove yourself wrong, like fight confirmation bias.
Mm,
Um, and then if you don't know, that's also fine. Just start trying things, set up a system, focus on your speed of, your iteration cycles, and ultimately try to learn each time you do it in the next experiment you do. And those people that, iterate very fast and can learn from the data they get from that, not drink their own Kool-Aid, those are the companies that innovate incredibly fast.
mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Super interesting. Interesting insights into traits that you also look for in other people. Bringing into your team as well as yourself. And what? Yeah. So I mean, you've grown your team, and did you say it's mostly remote? So like mostly remote. Yeah.
We've been remote. I mean, my two business partners were in Vienna, Austria. I was in Raleigh, North Carolina. Before co-authoring really was a thing, we were doing it together, and it was magical in 2013, 14. We've used every single uh, online uh, video
Mm,
chat. We are a Slack power user, let me tell you.
mm,
And yeah, I mean, the joke I like to say is when COVID happened, the only thing that didn't change in my life was my job. I just went back and did the exact same thing I did the day before. We've been remote from two people all the way to 157, I think, at the current rate.
yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating because that's years before it became normal. So how do you maintain like culture and morale and team motivation and all that? Working remote and building such a big team fast.
Yeah, a lot of people when COVID happened, I had a lot of friends that had never worked remote, and they're like, "Oh, this is so great! I'm so glad we can finally work from home." And I always told them, I was like, I had a daughter that was in kindergarten during COVID as well, and I looked at it and I was like, "There's no way you're going to teach a kid to read remotely. Like, it's just impossible." And if you know that, like, that whole entire class is like academically behind because they started out reading at home. Um, So I like to tell people a lot, there's negatives, there's downsides to COVID, or sorry, downsides to remote as much as there's positives. And most of the downsides comes in communication.
Mm,
You have to over communicate in a remote environment. You have to document what you do. We have kind of a culture that I would say most people, when they come to it, it can be a little bit hard at first to maybe adapt to it. And part of this is because we are very, I guess, because the roots of our company was almost kind of a Germanic engineering culture. So very high feedback, very direct communication. I like to tell the story of like the first time me and Peter clashed, criticized my work, and it just really bothered me. And I got upset. And he was like, "Why are you getting upset? I'm just talking about your work. Like, I'm not talking about you personally." And I said to him, in classic American fashion, like, "I'm an American. I take pride in my work." Because, like, this is what you're taught. And it took me a while to realize, oh, Peter's trying to help me. Like, that feedback is ultimately a person trying to improve me and help me. If he didn't give me the feedback, that would be him not caring about it. So, in our remote culture, one of the things we have to do, because you don't have like the water cooler talks, we're in multiple different time zones. You need to have this sort of high feedback culture for people to learn. Uh, the other thing we do is we have a lot of public communication. And so you can imagine high feedback culture in public communication. People can struggle with that at first because, they're embarrassed by it. They
mm,
feel like they look stupid or something like this. And so you have to explain why. Like, why are we doing this? I'm not just trying to, like, I don't know, walk you through your mistake in front of everybody for no reason. But there's a lot of people that could learn from this if I do it publicly. So it's very efficient to do it that way. And so you have to create like a trust culture there. And inherently, I tell people all the time, remote only works for certain individuals because if I can't trust you to, I don't know, show up in the morning, do your work, I'll eventually find out. Like you can see through activity or you can see through impact. The person's not doing their job or something. But if I even have a smell or hint or sniff of that, I can't work with the person because I don't trust them, right?
Mm,
And it's kind of the same way. Like I need people to trust our company and our communication style and how we're going about it, and we need to trust them so that they do this. Uh, as you scale that, I mean, it was easier when we were scaling, hiring 2 people a quarter, 5 people a year, that sort of growth. You have people that, hey, let me sit next to you and teach you why we do this here. I'm your buddy. If anything goes wrong, just come talk to me. I'll explain it. This person's not as mean as they're coming off. They're actually really nice. They just really care about this thing or whatever, right? When you have the hyper scale that we did, once you start doing inorganic growth and you're scaling at a larger scale and you're hiring, I don't know, 15 to 20 to 30 or maybe even 50 people in a year, the thing that's really difficult is that indoctrination. How do you tell the story of why? Because if you don't constantly tend to your garden of culture, it goes different places and it will naturally go. Like the whole joke is, culture is not what's written on the walls, it's what's said in the halls, right? It really, your culture is not your core values or these great things you say on, podcasts or something. It's what if somebody at the company would tell you it would be? How do people work together? And as you get larger, that gets more difficult. I do think because we're building a software developer product, like we are high GitHub users. Like you have a lot of tools, and I think engineers, especially remote, is very beneficial to an engineering job. Um, I think for sales, like we have an office here in Raleigh, we have an office in London, offices in France and Vienna, and our salespeople, we get them together more. We have hybrid work here in Raleigh, and that's because hearing pitches and doing things like that, they're more social people. They need to hear other people. It's a little bit different than I'm getting in the flow state and I have 2 blocks of my day, 2 4-hour blocks of my day. The other thing we've done, and we literally did this from the inception of the company, because the first thing I had to do was like, hey, I need to get to know you. You're all the way in Austria, I'm all the way in the US. And if you don't know, like the fact that an Austrian and a US person or American got together and went to business is strange. It's not common, I would say. So we did retreats, and we did them twice a year before, and now we do them every year at our size. So getting people in person, and a lot of the retreat is, yeah, let's have the team meeting that we can't have when we're remote, or that's better done in person. Let's have, once you go over an hour on Zoom, it kind of gets tiring, right?
mm,
Um, and then the other thing is you need to know your peers, you need to know your colleagues. We have cultures, we're in 39, 29 different countries, and all those people are still in those countries. Most of them, it's English is their second language. You can
mm,
imagine culture clashes happen all the time. But if you, I don't know, had a beer with that person on a retreat in a cool city where you had never been there, had an experience, or you saw them do karaoke, or you do any one of these things, all of a sudden that person is no longer an avatar in a text space. You start hearing the words they say in their voice. You start understanding them. Yeah, they struggle sometimes with picking certain words. So I'm not going to read that as like they're really mean and saying this aggressively. They probably just don't know the right word, right? You start doing things like this. And so all of those things I think are extremely important. Um, but yeah, I would tell you it's some things in a remote company are easier, like access to talent everywhere.
mm,
I think if you give people trust and inherently, if you're saying you're remote, we have flexibility, we need you here for certain times to like get your work done. We're not going to look over your shoulder. You don't have to clock in and clock out. The right personality resonates with that and then like likes to work at that place because they feel trusted. That's a
mm,
huge benefit. And then there's downsides. Like, I mean, it's hard to make everyone feel part of a society, of a group or whatever when you don't have the like, hey, let's go grab a coffee in the morning or a drink at night, or let's get dinner, or hey, what did you do on the weekend? Let's talk about the game, whatever it may be, which those are harder to replicate in a remote environment.
mm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I can definitely resonate when you open that with like making sure you almost overshare, on like Slack groups and that sort of thing. And I definitely resonate with that because I mean, I've only got a very small team compared to yours. And yeah, I'll find myself when I go into like my deep work, my maker work stuff, I'll end up working in silos and not sharing enough about what's going on to my team and that sort of thing. So, and that's, yeah, working remotely. And it's totally different when you get inside the same room and you kind of, yeah, if you have those opportunities to create that
Those
sort of
natural
hive mind as well.
conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah, those natural conversations, like the water cooler talks that you run into somebody because you're there at the same time, and all of a sudden you end up talking about the project and you get information that you would have never gotten if you
Mm,
didn't have that water cooler conversation. You don't get those in remote.
for sure. For sure. Yeah. Um, my next question was it was about you were talking about like with your team and then when you kind of opened up the whole your sort of journey with your wife was pregnant at the time and you took a big risk in trying something totally new, totally different, and she supported you in that. um, as a family man now, have you got more children now, like as time's going on? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I have
as
three
as
children. Yeah, go ahead.
Go on, sorry.
I was gonna say I have three children. My oldest, my daughter Lillian, I literally date her based on the company because she was born, I think literally 3 months or 4 months after we started the company. I have an 8-year-old son and a 5-year-old. So yeah, like I have a growing family, a lot going on at home, just as much with the business.
And then, yeah, so I mean, how do you balance that? How do you balance, growing a family with building a company fast? Like, how do you find ways to balance that out?
Yeah, like Jeff Bezos talked about this, that he didn't believe work-life balance is some like scale like this. It's more of a circle. And I'm really, really, really lucky that I love my job. I love what I get to do. It's the best job I've ever had out of all the other jobs I've had, right? And so, uh, but at the same time, the reason I went to law school, the reason I drove myself was because I came from like a lower middle class family, always had like, well, we can't afford that be the comment. And so I was really driven to have a family, raise a family, provide for a family. That was my primary reason for not getting in trouble in high school and ultimately trying to go to law school and make a career. So I kind of view it as like if I don't get myself up from this computer, uh, which I wouldn't. I mean, there's times where I would just sit here and work, 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 because I don't know, I'm motivated. There's a lot of things that can be done. There's always more work than time. But then I think about the other side of things that wouldn't be good. So my wife would probably divorce me. I wouldn't have a relationship. What would I be doing it for in the end? Okay, I can say, I'm going to become an altruist or, some other version of making this make sense. But for me, it was like, no, I do my job and do this for a couple reasons. A lot of people don't know this, but in 21, when Insight came, like, I sold some of my ownership in the company as well. Not a lot of it, but I sold enough that, like, I don't know, I had more money than I ever thought I would ever have in my life. And, my business partners at the time kind of asked the question, like, why are you still doing this? Don't get me wrong, part of me couldn't imagine their lives and what they did. And it was great. We had like almost three different stories in this. Uh, but I couldn't imagine not working. I've been working since I was 14. I was what, 37, 38 at the time that we did the transaction. I didn't want to retire. I never had one of these goals of like, hey, I want to retire. And at the same time, like I wasn't driven by money and providing for my family anymore because they're fine, right? And so it was a little bit of a crisis where I had to like reinvent myself.
Mm,
Um, and so yeah, you had to think about like, okay, well, my daughter's 7 years old at the time. I remember when I was 7 years old. I don't remember what my mother was doing working. I know what she did now because I've been told the story my whole life, but I can't remember, like, yeah, my mom did X, Y, and Z. I just know she got up early in the morning. She would leave the house by like 5:30 or 6, and she'd show back up at home at 3:30. I knew it every time. She had to go to bed at a certain hour to be able to do it. And it taught me some form of like work ethic. And I was deathly afraid of my oldest not knowing it. If my oldest didn't know it, my two boys wouldn't have any clue, and both of their parents never worked. So part of me, when I think of this work-life balance, part of me, I think you can play the example, not always just always being there. Like I think our generation or my generation, I'll say, we have the boomer generation ahead of us, and it's kind of like, well, I need to spend more time with my kids because my mom and dad didn't spend as much time as they should with us. And I kind of think it is like, well, you can spend too much time with your kids. Like a village raises your kids, but you also need to be present in there. The beauty of my situation is, yes, I have to travel. Yes, I'm super busy at work, but being remote, like most of my team, it's changed now, but my mornings were super busy because they're 6 hours ahead of me in Europe or 5 hours ahead of me in the UK. And okay, so I wake up to a pile of work, a pile of like Slack notifications and things like that. I work through them by the afternoon, 2, 3 o'clock, it's kind of calmed down. And so the beauty has always been that I've been able to work from home, and now I come into office, 3 days, something like this. Uh, but compared to when I was an attorney, I get to see my kids infinitely more every day with the 15 minutes walking down at lunchtime and seeing my daughter or playing with my youngest that, wasn't in school or something like this. And then when they get home, if they need to be taken to, I don't know, a sporting practice or something like that, I can do that. And then like on the weekends, I coach my kids' soccer team. If anything, what it's killed, the thing that I take up time is like, I don't know, maybe I don't know the latest, greatest TV shows going on. Uh, Probably don't watch a lot of TV. Maybe I didn't get to, I don't game nearly as much as I used to. I wish I miss it at times. I like to read, but read. I'm almost always reading related to work, so it's like nonfiction books or business books. But I don't think of it as like a work-life balance in a sense that I think of it as like, why do I need to get up from this computer? Because I need to be healthy, so I need to go work out, and I play soccer and I go work out, right? Oh, why do I need to get up from this computer? Because I need to be a present father, or my kid's gonna hate me. Or I need to be a present husband because my wife will, divorce me or something like this. And so the good thing about that is it makes me get up from the computer. And the good thing about that is I have excuses to get up from the computer. It's otherwise I want to get up from the computer. So I also have a job I love so much and that I'm passionate about that I can do it. The only thing that I think is different with me than the average is with my company being in Europe and people being distributed, I spend a lot of my time traveling to give face time to people. Um, and so I probably travel. No, I'm not like a traveling salesperson. It's not like I'm gone every week or anything like this. But when I do travel, I'm gone for a week, right? And things like this. So there's little things I've done. Like I have a beach house. We have a beach at the coast here. And when my kids are out this summer, that 2 months that they're there, we work at the beach. I do not travel, maybe one week out of those 2 months, and I'm there with my kids. But I mean, the flexibility of working remote and in the job and working in software, and especially now not having to get on sales calls per se, I have a lot of time to carve out to kind of, and the flexibility to do it probably more than most.
Mm.
So I don't see it like I see it more that I'm choosing my hobby. One of my hobbies is working as well as my job is working. Like it's more that
Mm.
than anything
Mm.
else.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Yeah, really fascinating. And do you find like, so you kind of talked about, you almost had a personal sort of transformation with, that you're working to earn a living, earn more money, hit those like money goals, and then transforming into, you've now, achieved that to the point where you've got enough wealth, but Why do you keep working? Trying to understand the real why behind the mission and the vision. Um, does it did it become more challenging or less challenging to find that balance with personal life and stuff after that transformation, before the transformation? Like you have a bigger company now, so you're kind of solving bigger problems, but I don't know. Does it get easier? Does it get harder? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I, uh, so I use the word crisis, and I would use that word. I think you'd have to know me better before and like how coin operated and how coin driven I was. Like I used to tell people, I don't know, these people are like, oh, I love my job. I love doing what I do, and I would do it for free. Nope, never had that. Like I never had
Mm,
that before. It was like, if you want me to be a garbage collector because you'll pay me more money than being an attorney, going to be a garbage collector. See y'all later. Like whatever it does to get it in the bank.
mm,
And that was, I think that was because my childhood, it was a reaction to my childhood. My childhood was, I don't know, the reason I've been working since I was 14 is like I wanted to take a girlfriend to the movies. Well, I had to pay for it. My mother didn't have the money to pay for it. If I wanted new shoes that, weren't the Kmart shoes or something like this, I had to figure out a way to pay for it. And so I think what people that have never lived that don't understand, like when money is your problem, it is the like only problem you have.
mm,
Like it is the problem all the time, and you think
mm,
about it all the time, and it stresses you out all
mm,
the time. And don't get me wrong, I won't go into like US basically pursue like promotes a consumer, they promote debt credit cards and things like that that put people on this treadmill of not great financial living. And so
mm,
you cannot make a lot of money and still live within your means and not have this stress. So up until, I mean, even when we started growing the business, I kind of got away from that. But then it became like, well, but I still need to do this job. And what if this job goes away? What if the business goes under? Uh, you know, I didn't even think about net worth tied up into like the ownership of the business. I thought about the dividend we were giving out each year. Like that was the way I thought of the business, right? I started out, I put myself through college and law school. I took out a lot of debt. I know this is like a super US thing, but I had 240 grand in debt when we started this company in law school, like law school debt, undergraduate debt. Man, that's like a noose around your neck. Like you're
mm,
constantly thinking about it. And so the thing that happened when we sold money was like I'd always thought like I needed to get to a certain amount to give me optionality to retire. And then like that amount was like four times or five times that amount is what happened in 21. Part of it was crazy what happened to SaaS multiples, how COVID helped our business from 19 to 21, and really from private equity firms believing in the TAM of the market, and a lot of companies that digital transformation was like the thing they needed to do in the next 5 years to sit. We needed to do it yesterday. We have people working at home, right? And so the thing that was crazy is I don't think I ever uh, factored in my brain long term of what happens when you get to the goal? I thought I'd be doing it my whole life, like working towards it my whole life. And don't get me wrong, this is like I'm not one of these people. It's like, oh, woe is me. Like it's obviously a great situation to be in, and I'm blessed by what happened. And at the same time, like I like to say, Bill Gates has problems. I promise you, dude. Maybe different problems than me and you do. But he's got problems. Everyone has problems. It's like the human condition to have problems. And so the problem is I had the problem I never thought I would think about. So I never spent any time on it. And the problem was like, well, if you're not doing this for money now, why do you do it? And it kind of went to the whole like, well, so if the person tells me you can be a trash collector and you make more money, well, I don't need more money. So no, I'm not going to go do trash collection, right? Or whatever. Uh, the other thing that happened is like, you realize like, okay, how do I not suck up all this money I got. Excuse my language, but like you never think about managing money like that. And you look around and there's a bunch of people that want to talk to you now. because hey, you got money, right? Like, and they want to get their bit, right? They want to, and everybody's got advice, and they want to become your best friend. They want to take you out, all that good stuff. And so it was like the thing that also mattered to me was I didn't want to lose who I was. And what I meant by that is like, still wanted to have strong work ethic. I still wanted to raise my kids. I didn't want to grab a nanny and have my kids raised by a nanny. We're sending our youngest to private school now. It's a super big struggle. Like I didn't grow up with private school.
Mm,
Why am I sending my kid to private school? And so you have all these things going in, and then you ask yourself, like, why am I still taking time away? My daughter's 10 now. She knows that I work. My son's 8. He'll know that I work. Okay, maybe my youngest, well, I mean, he grew up with like a really big house and a really big beach house, so he's already going to be kind of, you know, he's already growing up way differently than I did, right? Um, but you start asking, like, why am I still doing this? And then you look around at some of the people that you have, and you look at the impact the company has. And one of the beauties of what we do here, being this kind of ingredient company, is we help a lot of people in ways that you wouldn't think. Like, I don't know, we help people digitize forms for cancer trials, right? We help farmers do an application to get like a small business loan in Africa. Like just some really cool stuff. We help have accessibility to wheelchairs, the wheelchair manual, so people can put together wheelchairs, things like this. And you're just like, wow, like, you are having a massive impact through all these people, through this massive lever. If you don't do it, well, somebody else will do it, but they maybe don't do it the way that I think it should be done, and maybe not what I think is the right way or the innovative way. Maybe it's completely driven by earn an extra dollar here, grow another point there. And so you start thinking way more about that impact. What impact can I have on the people that I work with? I
mm,
mean, the lives I have here, like, how can I help mentor people here? How can I create? I mean, one of the most motivating things to me is like, I worked in a lot of places. There was a lot of stupid shit at places I worked at. I had a law firm that we didn't see clients every day, and I had to wear a suit and tie every single day. I don't know why, to sit at a desk, because the managing attorney there said, well, I'm one of these old school people to believe if you didn't have a tie on your head, a tie on your neck, your head would fall off. Why am I having to dry clean clothes, wake up every morning, put uncomfortable clothes on? Because you have some stupid belief that makes no damn sense. So I have the chance to create a work environment that I think doesn't have those things. That's, I don't know, empowering the people that work in my company. I don't know, not caring just about experience, but caring about, the idea, wherever it comes from, things like this. So yeah, it changed my motivation, and it was a crisis at the time because I don't think the other thing I got is I got a boss because I got a board, and we didn't have a board. And so you go for 8 years where you're an entrepreneur, and then all of a sudden you have a board and you don't know what that's going to be like. And
mm,
don't get me wrong, I am incredibly lucky. I got to pick my investor, somehow miraculously picked very well. I'm actually like, Insight Partners is a phenomenal firm for founders. They back founders. They definitely do not leave you alone, which I think is what some people think. Oh, they just invest and then leave you alone. No, they give you help. They'll give you an opinion, but they also really care about your opinion. You feel strongly about something, you want to go this way, literally 10 times out of 10, they're going to let you go the way you are and then look at the results, right?
mm,
So I had a really good board in the end, but at the time, I didn't know that. I
mm,
didn't know what becoming a private equity backed CEO was, right? Like I knew if I failed at it, I was going to lose my job. Like it was pretty clear, right?
mm,
So a lot of those things happened when that happened, and that was the personal journey. And yeah, now I think more about how can you make an impact? How can it be more than, how can I be a part of something bigger than myself, right? Like
mm,
that's when humans really, I think, do great things. And
mm,
when you're not solely focused on me, I, you start focusing on we, the group, the community, the future, and things like that.
mm. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, fascinating, and yeah, it makes me think about like the I think it's Tony Robbins' Human Needs, where he talks about like growth and contribution, and it's like the contribution, growth feeds you and feeds your life path, but the
Absolutely.
contribution like feeds your soul, because once you grow enough and get to a point, then you've got to give that value back and contribute. Yeah, this is a fascinating conversation, Jonathan. I really appreciate it. Where can people find out more about you? What resources, what?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a great conversation. Sorry if I dominated the talk. I do talk a
Loved it.
lot and can be
No,
robust.
I loved it. Loved it.
But yeah, I'm on X, I guess now is JD JD Rhyne. Obviously, our company is Nutrient IO, so you can find out about our products there. You can hit me up on LinkedIn, places like this. So yeah, I think those are the likely places to reach out to me, and find out more about the company and kind of what we do.
Mm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, well, definitely, I'll encourage my listeners to go and check those sources out. I'll post some links in the descriptions and whatnot. And yeah, really appreciate it, Jonathan. It was great to have you, and we'll talk again soon sometime.
Yeah, thanks, James. Thanks so much for the time. Have a great rest of your night. Take it
Yeah,
easy.
thanks a
Bye
lot.
bye.
Bye bye.